In the business class lounge at Charles de Gaulle Airport, Villanelle checks her messages. A coded text confirms that Konstantin will meet her at the La Spezia Cafe in Gray's Inn Road in London at 2 p.m., as arranged. Returning her phone to her bag, she sips a coffee. The lounge is warm, with smoothly molded seating in restful shades of white and taupe. The walls are flecked with illuminated leaf shapes. Beyond the plate glass exterior wall, the tarmac, slush, and sky are barely distinguishable gray. Villanelle is traveling on a false passport as Manon Lefebvre, the co-author of a French investment newsletter. Her cover story is that she's in London to talk to an online publisher interested in setting up a partnership. She looks professionally anonymous in a mid-length trench coat, narrow jeans, and ankle boots. She's wearing no makeup, and despite a seasoned, gray-lensed acetate sunglasses, airports attract photographers and increasingly law enforcement professionals armed with facial recognition software. An Air France steward appears in the lounge and directs the business class passengers to their flight. Villanelle has reserved a front aisle seat in the waiting Airbus, and although she makes a point of not meeting his eye, she can tell that the man in the window seat, currently flicking through an in-flight magazine, is determined to engage her in conversation. She ignores him and, taking out a 4G tablet and earphones, is soon immersed in a video clip. The clip shows, in slow motion, the contrasting terminal performances of 2 handgun rounds when fired into a block of clear ballistics gelatin, a testing medium designed to simulate human tissue. 1 round is Russian, 1 American. Both are jacketed hollow point, designed to deliver massive kinetic shock and remain within a target's body rather than passing through. Knowing that she is likely to be operating in a busy urban environment, this information is of interest to Villanelle. She's going to want a one-shot lights-out kill. She can't risk the possibility of collateral damage. She frowns, torn between the 2 hollow point rounds. The Russian round expands on entry, its jacket peeling back like the petals of a flower as it blasts through flesh and bone. The US round, by contrast, doesn't deform, but tumbles nose over point, tearing a devastating wound cavity as it goes. Both have their very considerable merits. "Could I ask you to switch off your device, mademoiselle?" It's the stewardess, chic in her dark blue tailored suit. "Of course." Villanelle smiles coolly, blanks the screen, and takes out the earphones. "Good movie?" asks her companion, seizing his chance. She noticed him earlier in the business class lounge. Late 30s and implausibly good-looking, like a designer-dressed matador. "Actually, I was shopping." "For yourself?" "No, for someone else." "Someone special?" "Yes, it's going to be a surprise." "Lucky him." He levels a dark brown gaze at her. "You're Lucy Drake, aren't you?" "Excuse me?" "Lucy Drake, the model?" "Sorry, no." "But..." He reaches for the in-flight magazine and pages through it until he reaches a fragrance advertisement. "That is not you." Villanelle looks at the page. It's true, the model does look uncannily like her. But Lucy Drake's eyes are a piercing green. The fragrance is called Printemps, spring. Villanelle takes off her sunglasses. Her own eyes are the frozen gray of the Russian midwinter. "Forgive me," he says. "I was mistaken." "It's a compliment. She's lovely." "She is." He holds out his hand. "Louis Martin." "Manon Lefebvre." She looks down at the magazine, now on the armrest between them. "How did you know that model's name, if you don't mind me asking?" "My wife and I own an agency, Tempest. We've got divisions in Paris, London, Milan, and Moscow." "And this Lucky Drake is on your books?" "No, she's with Premier, I think. She's not working so much anymore." "Really?" "She wants to act, apparently. And she thinks the more editorial and advertising she does, the less chance she has of being taken seriously." "So she does have talent?" "She has talent as a model, which is very much rarer than you might think. As an actress," he shrugs. "But then people so often undervalue their real talents, wouldn't you say? They dream of being something they can never be." "You're Spanish?" asked Villanelle, deflecting the personal questions that she senses coming. "Yes, but I spend very little time in Spain. Our main residences are in London and Paris. Do you know London?" She considers. Did 6 weeks brutal unarmed combat training in the Essex marshes count? A fortnight spent hurtling round hairpin bends on the evasive driving course at Northwood? A week learning to pick locks with a retired burglar on the Isle of Dogs? A little, she says. The stewardess is back with champagne. Martin accepts. Villanelle asks for mineral water. You should think of modeling, he says. You have the cheekbones and the fuck you stare. Thank you very much. It's a compliment, believe me. What do you do? Financial stuff. Much less glamorous, I'm afraid. So, was your wife a model? Elvira? Yes, originally she was. A very successful one, but these days I deal with the clients and she runs the back office. The conversation takes its predictable course. Villanelle is guarded on the subject of her alter ego Manon Lefebvre and presses Martin for details about Tempest. With 2 glasses of Veuve Clicquot drunk and a third half empty, he's only too happy to talk about himself, while simultaneously plying Villanelle with a stream of increasingly flirtatious compliments. For a moment she wonders if he's planned from M50, or France's External Intelligence Services, the DGSE, but she didn't book the London flight. Instead, she took a taxi hailed at random outside the galleries Lafayette on the Boulevard Haussmann, and paid cash for her ticket when she got to the airport. Basic counter-surveillance measures, including a last-second pull-off into a service station on the A1 autoroute, told her that she wasn't followed from Paris, and Martin was in the business class lounge before her, already checked in. Most importantly, her instincts, highly tuned when it's a question of her own survival, tell her that this man is not playing a role, that he really is the overgroomed seducer that he appears to be. The joke about narcissistic types like Martin is that they always think they're in control. At work, in conversation, during sex. Her thoughts drift to that night in Palermo. Say what you like about Leoluca Messina, but he didn't have control issues. In fact, he was perfectly happy to let her fuck him, while she was holding a cocked and loaded Roger. In its way, the whole episode was quite romantic. Konstantin is sitting in front of the cafe counter, facing the door and Gray's Inn's restaurant. The Evening Standard is open in front of him at the sports page, and he's sipping a cappuccino. When Villanelle walks in, stamping snow from her boots, he looks up, his gaze vague, and nods her to a seat opposite him. The downbeat welcome robs the moment of its potential drama. No one looks up at the young woman in a thrift shop coat and knitted beanie. She orders a cup of tea, and the pair begin an inaudible conversation. Were anyone to attempt audio surveillance, they would find their efforts frustrated by the lo-fi snarl of the sound system and the steamy hiss and cough of the Geiger coffee machine. For 30 minutes, as customers come and go, they discuss logistics and weaponry in fast, idiomatic Russian. Konstantin tests Villanelle's plan to destruction, throwing up objection after objection, but finally concedes its workability. He orders a second cappuccino and stirs his cup meditatively. Palermo what worried me, he tells her. What you did, driving through the city at midnight on the back of Messina's motorcycle, that was reckless. Things could have gone badly wrong. I improvised. I was in control throughout. Listen to me, and listen well. You're never completely safe, and you can never fully trust anyone. Not even you? Yes, Villanelle, you can trust me, but part of you should always be mistrustful, questioning, and attuned to danger. Part of you shouldn't fully trust me. I want you to survive, okay? Not just because you're good at what you do, but... He stops, annoyed that his concerns for her have momentarily become personal. From the first, in that hut by the Chusovaya River, he has sensed the cross currents of sex and death swirling beneath her icy surface, known that the implacable hunger that drives her could also destroy her. For a moment she looks almost vulnerable. Go on. His eyes rake the busy cafe. Look, right now no one knows for sure that you even exist, but what happens this week could change everything. The British are vengeful people. If you give them a half a chance, their security services will come after you with everything they've got, and they will not back off. So this is important, this action. It's vital. Our employers don't take these decisions lightly,
This man must be eliminated.
With a finger, she traces a V in spilled tea on the melamine surface of the table. I sometimes wonder who they are, these employers of ours.
They're the people who decide how history is to be written. We are their soldiers, Oksana. Our job is to shape the future.
Oksana is dead, she murmurs.
And Villanelle must survive.
She nods, and even in the winter dimness of the cafe, he can see that her eyes are shining. Later, high above South Audley Street in Mayfair, she looks westwards. Beyond the floor-to-ceiling window, the sky is umber in the twilight, and the trees are grey. Snowflakes drive silently against the plate glass. The top-floor apartment is registered in the name of a corporate finance group. There's a TV suite and a state-of-the-art sound system, which Villanelle will not use, and a fully provisioned kitchen, which she will leave only slightly depleted. For the next 48 hours, she will spend much of her time here in the bedroom, sitting as now in a white leather chair, waiting. There are moments when she would welcome the sting of loneliness. Instead, she feels a level blankness, neither happy nor unhappy. She senses a rising of the tide, an echo of the action to come. Konstantin will do his part, but in the end there will just be her, and Catherine, and the moment. She touches her finger to her mouth, to the faint ridge of the scar. She was 6 when her father brought Khalif home. A hunting dog rejected by its previous owner, the animal attached itself devotedly to Oksana's mother, who was already gravely ill. Oksana wanted Khalif to love her too, and one day she climbed onto the steel-framed bed in which her mother passed her increasingly pain-racked days and nights, and pressed her face close to the dog, which was curled up on the thin blanket. Baring sharp teeth in a vicious snarl, Khalif struck out at her. There was a lot of blood, and Oksana's torn lip, stitched without anesthetic by a medical student from a neighboring apartment, was slow to heal. Other children stared at her, and by the time the wound ceased to be noticeable, Oksana's mother was dead, her father was in Chechnya, and Oksana herself had been consigned to the tender mercies of the Sakharov Orphanage. Villanelle could easily have her upper lip remodeled by a plastic surgeon, so that it curves into the perfect bow that nature intended, but she hasn't done so. The scar is the last vestige of her former self, and she can't quite bring herself to erase it. From nowhere, she feels a morbid crawl of desire. Rolling onto her side on the white leather, she presses her thighs together and clasps her arms across her small breasts. For several minutes she lies like this, her eyes closed. She recognizes it, this hunger, knows that it will tighten its grip unless satisfied. She showers, dresses, and slicks back her hair. The lift conveys her soundlessly to the ground floor and the street. She blinks as the first snowflakes find her face. Cars pass with a faint hiss of tires, but there aren't many people on foot, except a prostitute in a faux leopard-skin coat and platform heels waiting on the corner of Tilney Street, patiently eyeing the forecourt of the Dorchester Hotel. Walking northwards, navigating on impulse, Villanelle turns from South Audley Street into Hill Street, then through an archway into a narrower road leading to a square so small it's almost a courtyard. One side is taken up by a brightly illuminated gallery window, beyond which a private view is taking place. There's a single spotlight object in the window, a stuffed weasel on a plinth, strewn with bright, multicolored cupcake sprinkles. Villanelle stares at it. The sprinkles look like multiplying bacilli. The installation, or sculpture, or whatever it is, conveys nothing to her. "Are you coming in?" The woman, late 30s, black cocktail dress, wheat blonde hair pulled back in a chignon, is laying out of the glass door of the gallery, holding it half closed to keep the cold air at bay. Shrugging, Villanelle enters the gallery, losing sight of the woman almost immediately. The place is packed with prosperous-looking invitees. A few are looking at the paintings on the walls, but most are facing inwards, conversing in tight groups as catering staff edge between them with canopies and bottles of cold prosecco. Sweeping a glass from one of the trays, Villanelle positions herself in a corner. The paintings seem to have been reproduced from blown-up press photographs and blurry snatches of film, anonymous, faintly sinister groupings, several with the faces blacked out. A man in a velvet-collared coat is standing in front of the nearest painting, a study of a woman in the back seat of a car, her shocked features lit by photo flash, her arm raised against the invading lenses of the paparazzi. Studying the man's expression, the faint frown of concentration, the unwavering gaze, Villanelle duplicates it. She wants to be invisible, or at least unapproachable, until she has finished her drink. So, what do you think? It's the woman who invited her in. The man in the velvet-collared coat moves away. Who is she in the painting? Villanelle asks. That's the point. We don't know. She could be a film star arriving at a premiere, or a convicted murderer arriving for sentencing. If she was a murderer, she'd be handcuffed and she'd arrive at the court in an armored van. The woman looks at Villanelle, takes in the chic Parisian robe and the Balenciaga biker jacket and smiles. Are you speaking from experience? Villanelle shrugs. She's some burnt-out actress, and she's probably wearing no pants. And there's a long moment's silence. When the woman speaks again, the register of her voice has subtly changed. What's your name? She asks. Manon. So, Manon, this event will take another 40 minutes, then I'm closing the gallery. After that, I think we should go and eat yellowtail sashimi at Nome in Berkeley Street. What do you say? Okay, says Villanelle. Her name is Sarah, and she had her 38th birthday a month ago. She's talking about conceptual art, and Villanelle is nodding vaguely, but not really listening. Not to the words, anyway. She likes the rise and fall of Sarah's voice, and she's touched, in an abstract sort of way, by the tiny age lines around her eyes and by her seriousness. Sarah reminds her just a little of Anna Ionova Leonova, a teacher at Industrialny District Secondary School and the only adult except her father to whom she has ever formed a real, unsimulated attachment. Is that good? Sarah asks. Villanelle nods and smiles, examining a pulsing sliver of raw fish before crushing it pensively between her teeth. It's like eating the sea. Around them, soft lights touch surfaces of brushed aluminium, black lacquer, and gold. There's a whisper of music. Conversation rises and falls. Sarah's lips form words, and Sarah's eyes meet hers, but it's Anna Ionova's voice that Villanelle hears. For 2 years, the teacher nurtured her charge's exceptional academic gifts and showed endless patience for her graceless, barely socialized behavior. Then, one day, Anna Ionova wasn't there. She'd been attacked and sexually assaulted while waiting for a late bus home from school. In hospital, the teacher was able to describe her assailant to the police, and they arrested an 18-year-old former pupil named Roman Nikonov, who had boasted of his intention to show the unmarried teacher what a real man felt like. But the police bodged the forensics, and in the end, Nikonov was released on technicality. Manon! She feels Sarah's cold hand take hers. Who are you? Sorry, miles away. You remind me of someone. Someone? A teacher at my school. I hope she was nice. She was, and she looked like you. Except that she didn't. She was really nothing like Sarah. Why had she thought that? Why had she said that? Where did you grow up, Manon? St. Cloud, outside Paris. With your parents? With my father. My mother died when I was 7. Oh my God, that's awful. Villanelle shrugs. It was a long time ago. So, what did she? Cancer. She was just a couple of years younger than you. Cover stories are part of Villanelle's life now. Clothes she puts on, takes off, and hangs up for the next time. I'm so sorry. Don't be. Withdrawing her hand from Sarah's, Villanelle opens the menu. Look at this. Wild strawberry steak jelly. We have to get some. She's always regretted that it was too dark to see Roman Nikonov's expression when she castrated him in the woods by the Mulyanka River. But she remembers the moment. The smell of the mud and of the exhaust from his Riga moped. The pressure of his hand on her head, forcing her to her knees. The throttled screams carrying far out over the water as she pulled out the knife and hacked his balls off. Sarah lives in a tiny flat over the gallery. As they walk back there, hand in hand, they leave dark footprints in the new snow. Okay, I get the paintings, but what's that? Villanelle asks, pointing to the cryptic installation in the gallery window. Sarah keys a code into the keypad by the door. Well, the stuffed weasel was a present given to me as a joke, and the sprinkles were in the kitchen, so I put them together. Quite fun, don't you think? Villanelle follows her up a narrow flight of stairs. So it doesn't mean anything at all? What do you think? I don't think anything. I don't care. So what do you... Villanelle half turns and pins her to the wall, silencing her with her mouth. It's a moment that has been inevitable, but Sarah is still taken by surprise. Much later, she wakes up to see Villanelle sitting upright in her bed, her lean upper body silhouetted against the first-dawn light. Reaching for her, Sarah runs a hand down her arm, feels the hard curves of her deltoid and bicep. What exactly was it that you said you did? She asked wonderingly. I didn't say. Are you going? Villanelle nods. Will I see you again? Villanelle smiles and touches Sarah's cheek, dresses quickly. Outside, in the little square, there is virgin snow and silence. Back at the South Audley Street apartment, she kicks off her clothes and is asleep within minutes. When she wakes, it's past noon. In the kitchen, there is a half-full cafetiere of Codename and Mason's breakfast blend coffee, still warm. Several sizable carrier bags stand by the front door where Konstantin has left them. She checks the goods. A pair of tortoise-shell framed glasses with pale grey lenses, a parka with a fur-trimmed hood, a black polo neck sweater, a plaid skirt, black woolen tights, and zipper boots. She tries it all on, walks around, accustoms herself to the look. The outfit needs wearing in, so she drinks a cup of the cooling coffee, leaves the apartment building, and makes her way across Park Lane to Hyde Park. Again, that amber sky, against which the avenues of leafless beeches and oaks are a darker grey-brown. It's early afternoon, but the light is already ebbing. Villanelle walks fast along the slush-blanked paths, hands in pockets, head down. There are other walkers, but she barely glances at them. At intervals, statues loom out from the dimness, their outlines blurred with encrusted snow. On a balustraded bridge across the Serpentine, she pauses for a moment. Beneath a cracked and staid pane of ice, the water is a lightless black. A realm of darkness and forgetting to which, on days like this, she feels herself almost hypnotically drawn. Tempting, isn't it? Villanelle turns, amazed to hear her thoughts so precisely echoed. He's about 30, lean-featured in a well-cut tweed coat with the collar turned up. I wasn't planning on doing any swimming. You know what I mean. To sleep, perchance to dream. His eyes are steady and as dark as the frozen waterway. You admire Shakespeare. He wipes snow off the balustrade with his sleeve and shrugs. He's a good companion in a war zone. You're a soldier. Used to be. And now? He lifts his gaze to the distant glow of Kensington. Research, you might say. Well, good luck with that. She rubs her ungloved hands together and blows into them. The light's going, and so should I. Home? The broken smile suggests they are sharing a private joke. That's right, goodbye. He raises a hand. See you around. Hunching into a parka, she walks away. Just some fucked up weirdo hitting on her. Except that he wasn't. With that lethal English courtliness of his, he's both more and less threatening than that. And familiar somehow. Is it possible that she's seen him before? Perhaps in the course of the counter-surveillance exercises that she performs almost subconsciously wherever she goes? Is he M15? Angling sharply southwards, she glances back the bridge. The man has disappeared, but she still senses his presence. Heading northwards for the nearest exit, she performs a cleaning run, designed to shake off any tail that she might have picked up. No one follows, no one changes direction, no one speeds up to match her pace. But if they are serious, whoever they are, they'll have a primary team foot following and a secondary team on static surveillance, ready to latch on if she burns the primaries. Turning eastwards, Villanelle walks along Bayswater Road towards Marble Arch. Not racing, but fast enough to make any tail pick up his or her speed. She stops briefly at a bus stop as if resting her legs, discreetly checking the area for anyone in the calculatedly drab plumage of the professional pavement artist. There's no one obvious. But then, if she had one of M15's A4 teams looked onto her, there wouldn't be. Forcing herself to breathe steadily, she makes for the Marble Arch underpass network. With its multiple exits, it's a good place to expose and lose a tail. Descending the steps at Cumberland Gate, she surfaces between the Edgware Road and hovers in a sports shop entrance, watching the reflection of the underpass exit in the plate glass window. No one glances at her, no one breaks step. Strolling to the Marble Arch entrance, she speed walks the 100-odd meters through the underpass, cuts back on herself by Speaker's Corner, and makes for the tube station. On the westbound Central Line platform, she lets the first two trains pass, scanning the platform for stay-behinds. The line is busy, and there are several possibilities. A young woman in a grey windproof jacket carrying a backpack. A bearded guy in a reefer jacket. A middle-aged couple holding hands. Stepping onto the third train, she travels as far as Queensway, and then, just as the doors are closing, squeezes out between them. Crossing the platform, she returns eastbound to Bond Street, surfaces, and hails a taxi in Davies Street. For the next 10 minutes, she sends the driver on a very strange route through Mayfair. A grey BMW follows them for a time, but then turns eastwards on Corston Street with an irritable growl. A minute later, a black Ford car appears in a wing mirror, and 3 turn-offs later is still there. As they coast into Clarges Mews, a choke point, Villanelle hands the driver a £50 note and issues swift instructions. 30 seconds later, the taxi drives to a halt, blocking the road, and the engine dies. As Villanelle slips out of her rear door, she hears the angry blare of the car's horn, but no one follows her down the narrow, brick-walled passageway, and when she doubles back 5 minutes later, the mews is deserted. And perhaps, she tells herself later at the South Audley Street apartment, no one was following me anyway. What would be the point? If the UK intelligence services know who and what I am, then it's all over. There won't be an arrest, just a visit from a Special Forces action team, probably E Squadron, and cremation in a municipal waste incinerator. This, according to Konstantin, is the British way, and nothing that Villanelle has seen of the British gives her the slightest reason to doubt him. But the East Squadron scenario is not going to happen, and with a smooth effort of will, she raises the apprehensions prompted by the afternoon's encounter. Curled like a panther on the white leather chair, she raises a glass of pink Alexander Black Sea champagne to the fading light. The wine is neither distinguished nor expensive, but it's a symbol of everything that in her other early life she could never have dreamt of. And it suits her mood. She's in lockdown now, her focus already narrowing to the moment-by-moment details of the next day's action. Anticipation rises through her, as sharp and effervescent as the bubbles prickling to the surface of the champagne, and with it the ache of the hunger that never completely goes away. She coils and uncoils on the white leather. Perhaps she'll go out and have some more sex. It'll help kill a few hours.
Eve groans. What time is it? 6:45, murmurs Nico, like every day at this time. Eve buries her face in the warm valley between his shoulder blades, clinging to the last vestiges of sleep. The strangulated sounds of the espresso machine overlays the measured tones of Radio 4's Today program. She's decided during the night to put a SO1 protection team on Victor Kedron. Coffee's done, Nika says. Okay, give me a couple of minutes. Returning from the bathroom, she smacks her shin, not for the first time, on the low glass-fronted fridge that he bought a month early on eBay. Shit, Nico, please. Do we have to have this thing here? He rubs his eyes. Not if you don't want milk in your coffee in the morning. Besides, where else would you like me to put it? There's no room in the kitchen. Ensuring that the blind is down, it has a habit of shooting up without warning, Eve lifts her nightdress over her head and reaches for her underwear. I'd argue that we don't need a medical standard refrigeration unit to cook one little milk jug. And if there's no room in the kitchen, it's because it's full of all your stuff. Oh, suddenly it's all my stuff. Okay, Swedish cookbooks, that solar-powered microwave, they're Danish. And that microwave is going to save us money. When? This is London NW3. There isn't any frigging sun for 11 months of the year. Either we get rid of some of your stuff, or we move somewhere bigger, and a lot less nice. We can't move. She dresses quickly. Why not? Because of the bees. He knots a dark brown tie over a silver grey shirt. Nico, please, don't get me started on those fucking bees. I can't go into the garden. The neighbors are terrified of being stung to death and... One word. Honey. This summer, we could harvest 15 kilos per hive. I've spoken to the dairy and... Yes, I know, it all makes sense in the future. Your 5-year economic plan. But it's the here and now we have to deal with. I can't live like this. I can't think straight. They crossed the tiny landing, stepping over a stack of back issues of Astronomy Now and an ancient dented cardboard box named Oscilloscopy Testing Equipment, K2D Ray 2, and descend the stairs. I think the first directorate is working you too hard, honey. You need to chill out. He checks the knot of his tie in the hall mirror and, gathering up a pile of exercise books from a shelf, shunts them into a battered Gladstone bag. You're going to make it back in time for the tournament at the club night tonight, aren't you? Should do. The calculation being that with an SO1 team in Kedron, she won't feel duty-bound to attend this lecture or political rally or whatever it is. Eve pulls on her coat, and Nico sets the state-of-the-art alarm the Thames House had thoughtfully provided. The front door closes, and hand in hand, their breath vaporous, they make their way through the half-light of morning towards Finchley Road tube station. In the P3 office at Thames House, Simon Mortimer looks inscrutable as he puts down the receiver. Unless you can come up with a specific reason for changing your mind on Kedron, it's no go, he tells Eve. Too short notice. Eve shakes her head. That's ridiculous. SO1 could easily have a team in place at half a day's notice. Is the foot-dragging coming from our end or theirs? Ours, as far as I can tell. This hesitation to deploy SO1 on the basis of what? The phrase used was female intuition. She stares at him. Seriously? Seriously. She closes her eyes. On the positive side, you have made your concern known. Your ass, if I may refer to it as such, is covered. I suppose you're right, but really, female intuition, what I said in my memo was that I was concerned that I'd underestimated the potential threat to Kedron. What exactly made you change your mind? On her screen, Eve calls up an article from Izvestia. Okay, this is from a speech she gave last month in Ekaterinburg. I'm translating. Our sworn enemy, which we will fight to the death and to which we will never surrender, is American hegemony in all its forms. Atlanticism, liberalism, the deceitful, he actually says snake-like, ideology of human rights, and the dictatorship of the financial elite. Pretty standard stuff, surely. Agreed, but there's a huge tranche of the Russian and former Soviet bloc population who see him as a kind of messiah. And messiahs don't have a long shelf life. They're too dangerous. Well, let's hope he says his piece at the Conway Hall and pushes off fast. Let's hope. She rubs her eyes. I suppose I ought to go. Don't much feel like it, but... She exits the Izvestia page. Simon, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you think I should do something about, the way I dress? That female intuition comment makes me worried I'm sending the wrong message. He frowns. Well, I know you're not even slightly like that. And as we're so often reminded, discretion is the keynote of the Thames House style. But I don't think there'd be any harm in your perhaps venturing a teensy bit further afield than the Marks and Spencer's classic and indigo ranges. He looks at her a little nervously. What does your husband think? Oh, Nico lives in a fashion universe all of his own. He teaches maths. Oh. I just don't want to see this department's authority undermined, Simon. We make serious decisions and we need to be taken seriously. He nods. Are you busy tomorrow afternoon? Not specially. Why? Well, I don't want to perpetuate any stereotypes here, but perhaps you and I could go shopping? The Vernon Hotel is a 6-story edifice faced with grey stone on the north side of High Holborn. Its clientele is for the most part as anonymous as its frontage, so reception manager Gerald Watts is happy to give his attention to the strikingly attractive young woman standing before him. She's wearing a fur-trimmed parka, and the eyes that meet his from behind the grey-tinted glasses are bright and direct. Her accent, with its hint of France and its suggestion of Eastern Europe, after 5 years at the Vernons from desk, Gerald considers himself something of an expert in these matters, is charmingly fractured. Her name, he discovers when he takes the credit card details, is Julia Fennon. She is not wearing a wedding ring. Absurdly, this pleases him. Proffering her key card to room 416, he allows the fingers to touch. Is it his imagination, or does he detect a flicker of complicity? Indicating with a raised hand that one of his assistants take her valise and show her to a room, he watches the easy sway of her hips as she walks towards the elevator.